Hey, what's up? Gary here. Looking to get started with side chaining, a new feature in CorOS 3.0.0 for your quad Cortex. Let's go check it out. All right, so let's get started talking about side chaining in the quad Cortex 3.0.0 CorOS update. So what does the term sidechain mean? Let's start with a definition first, and then we'll move on from there. Okay, so the word chain in this case is referring to your signal chain, your input to eventual output of your guitar signal. Okay, so in this case, in the quad Cortex, that's going to be the path of your signal from the left of the grid, meaning your input, to the right of the grid, where eventually you'll have an output. Okay, so in a sidechain, it's going to be the ability of a device block to be triggered by an input anywhere before the signal chain. So say, for example, you have a sidechain based device block in the center of a row. If you have an input occurring on that row previous to that block, it's capable of being able to trigger that device block to activate, to make it to do something, to make it inform or color your signal in some way, shape, or form. Okay? Still confused? That's okay. If you're still confused, that's fine. Sidechaining is something that's existed with Neural DSP and other modelers for quite some time, but it's a fairly new concept for this specific piece. So let's dig a little deeper. I'm going to give you a little bit more information about sidechains. We'll go through a couple of examples, and then you can start to understand a little bit more about how these work and kind of how you can start to use them practically. Okay? Let's get through a list first of devices that have been added in CorOS 3.0 to give you the ability to use sidechaining. Okay, so there's a couple that have dual usage. So we're going to start with those first. We have transparent blend and doubler. So these are two different types of device blocks that can be used either natively in presets that exist on the quad Cortex today, as well as versions that are used specifically for plugins. And that's something that I really want to make sure is clear, is in device plugins, device blocks that you're using that are coming from plugins operate a little bit differently still. While you can drag them in and interpolate those device blocks from plugins, right, with existing device blocks on the quad Cortex, there's still a little bit of a difference in how that signal is being processed and how it's actually working there. So in the case of sidechaining, inputs and outputs work a little bit differently, and to be able to support that, a couple of these different things, transparent blend and doubler being two mains, have a different way of operating, and you're going to have to choose a version whether or not you're trying to inform or color a device block from a plugin, and in that case using the plugin version of the transparent blend or doubler, versus if you're wanting to inform something from a native quad Cortex device block, in which case then you'll be using the transparent blend and doubler that are built for the native quad Cortex. Okay, and we'll go through looking at that in just a minute. Let's talk about a few of the other devices too that have been added now that you have sidechain capabilities with. Okay, you have your adaptive gate, you have the envelope filter, then you have four different compressors: Legendary 87, Octo, Solid State, and VCA. So let's go take a look at being able to get started setting up a preset that will start to make use of a sidechain, and then from there we can start looking at how to make practical examples of those. All right, let's get started with a preset. You can choose any preset you would like, by the way. It doesn't matter. You don't have to follow along with me if you want to. I'm using the Gojira plugin, the JD Rhythm 6. Minor modifications to just normalize some volume for recording purposes, but nothing major. But like I said, you can use any preset you want to be able to achieve this same effect. But I want to just show you being able to take one of the sidechain capable device blocks, drop it in, do a little bit of a side-by-side comparison of what the tone and the sound is on the preset as it stands, turning on sidechaining, and then show you a little bit about what that triggering looks like and how it can potentially impact the tone. Now, as I mentioned, there's a multitude of different devices that are capable of using sidechaining, right? And I think one of the main ones, obviously for the most part, are the compressors. Compressors are pretty well known to be something that can really be used in different portions of your signal chain to achieve very different types of compression results. right? And that's, I think, why there's so many of them there, is that type of trick that's been used for years and years in real amplifiers, real signal chains with real hardware and equipment in the past. It's been a little bit harder, trickier to be able to reach into the world of modeling, all right? Because that way of continuing to color and flavor that tone is different. It's quite a bit different in the way that operates. So let's take a look at this kind of classic example. And as any of the other videos, if you see any other videos on sidechaining, you're going to see a lot of folks kind of jump into the compressor and having that kind of pulsing kind of capability and doing that, which is cool. It's a cool effect. It's fun. I think there's a few different ways you can kind of get there. Compressors absolutely are one of the most natural ways, I think. And it's a great example to be able to show you just via what you can hear to your ear easily how this works, and then enable you to really kind of start experimenting from there. So enough of me talking. Let's just get to putting in a compressor. We're going to take a look at how to sidechain with that, how it colors your sound and makes it a little bit different, and then kind of release you to being able to start to really explore sidechaining further and starting to make those types of tones yourself. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to go with a compressor. So I'm going to put a new device blocker right here at the end of my signal chain. So we start on a row 1 with input 1 from my trusty Solar guitar that I'm holding right now. So what we're going to do is allow for chain to start in row 1 at the left here for input 1. Go through, we drop to row 3. You have a couple of other colorations. Obviously your amp and your cab block is down here. We have some other things that are disabled from the preset as it stands, but at any rate, your eventual output is multi-out. Okay, so nothing special. This is very plain vanilla type of preset, leveraging the two different primary device row blocks that you have. So let's take one of these compressors and enable it right here at the very end of the signal. Okay, so we're going to click there. We're going to click on compressor. I'm going to go to Legendary 87, and remember what I was telling you before, SC. We want to make sure we choose the side chain version of this, not the stereo, not the mono. We want side chain because we want to be able to trigger turning this compressor on and off with a specific input. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We dropped it in, have our Legendary 87 here with sidechain capabilities. I'm going to do a couple of slight tweaks here just to make this a little bit more noticeable when we're actually triggering it. Okay, so let's take this somewhere like, I'm not really, yeah, we'll start there. Okay, so first and foremost, what I would like to do is demonstrate to you briefly what this preset sounds like with no compression, just as it sits right now. We'll just do a quick plink through, and then we'll kind of test our bases from there. Okay. Okay, so that is our sound with no compressor. Okay, so we don't have the compressor on, and we also are not using sidechaining with the compressor. Now we will enable the compressor, and let's hear what this sounds like now. So as you can see, the compressor, as they generally do, is acting as a gain reduction, and also has obviously other configurations that you can use to kind of flavor that tone a little bit more. What the primary is doing is it's taking the gain that it's capturing from the inside, it's compressing it down to being a little bit easier without clipping as much, right? And that's what the majority of these compressors are kind of trying to do, is compress that tone to something that's easier to manage through the EQ range. So this is just the Legendary 87 set up with some very basic configurations, nothing too wild. Okay. Now let's enable our sidechain. So source in this case, so clicking on this device, going to source, using one of the device blocks that's capable of using sidechaining, is going to mean the trigger for this compressor in this case to turn on. Okay. So When we were just enabling this compressor like it is right now and I was playing, okay, it was taking the input directly from the signal chain. So it flowed through all of these device blocks to make it to this end, and then it compressed everything. All right, it compressed everything that it was capturing. There was no triggers involved or doing anything else. The trigger was just simply having the signal flow through here. Okay, so there was nothing that was like telling this compressor to turn on at certain times and then letting it slowly kind of roll off based on the attack and the release configuration here, right? So in this case, if I go to the input and I say input 1, what this is going to do is it's going to take the DI of my guitar right here, right at the very, very beginning of the signal chain, okay? And it's going to use that to directly trigger turning on and off this compressor for when we want it to actually be activated. So it won't continually activate all the time for the signal as it reaches it through the entirety of the signal chain. Instead, it's only going to be triggered when it's actually detecting the input here on your DI. And in this case, that's going to be input 1 from my guitar, okay? So this is a pretty interesting concept to be able to have, but check out the difference. You should hear a bit more of a pulse and kind of like a roll off of that compressor as I play. Hear that? You hear how it was triggering each time I was attacking the string, okay, and sending a signal through. It was activating the compressor, and then as soon as we would roll off to the next note, or that DI would lessen, right, off of input 1, you would hear that volume start to swell from the compressor basically rolling off and the standard signal coming through and not being triggering to be able to turn the compressor on. Okay, so that's the way this works. It's how you get that pulsing effect in this case, is being able to configure it in that manner. And so there you go. That is being able to use side chaining with a compressor. Let's take a look now at the same kind of scenario. So I'm going to go with the same preset that we just used to demonstrate leveraging side chaining with a Legendary 87 compressor. And instead, I'd like to take a look at a filter. Using a filter, putting a side chain capability on it, and also demonstrating what that sounds like both with and without sidechaining enabled. So that way you can really kind of hear the difference in how this is going to operate. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. I'm going to take the same exact scenario. I'm going to take the device block at the end of our signal chain before we reach our output. Okay, and I'm going to employ a filter. So we're going to click filter, and you'll see envelope filter. You have the two different versions. One, the standard that comes on the Quad Cortex, and the other that's sidechain capable. Let's go ahead and enable the sidechain capable one. And I'm not going to make any changes here when it comes to the effect of this this envelope filter. I just simply want you to hear it au naturel. I think it's the easiest way for you to be able to pick this device up, kind of look at it, compare notes on your own, and start to hear what this sounds like, and then really start to toy with it from there. There's a lot of configuration that you can do with these though. So I've brought it into my preset. I have disabled the device, so you can hear again what this preset sounds like without an envelope filter being on. Okay, so this is what that sounds like. Now, let's turn the envelope filter on. So right now, the envelope filter is on, but it's going to be capturing the filtering off of the entirety of the signal chain from the input at in1 on row 1 right here, all the way through every single device block here, down to row 3, all the way through all of these device blocks until we reach this spot. So basically what you're hearing is the filter. The filter's working just fine, but you're not really hearing much change with this filter when it comes to sounding like it kind of is sweeping or doing anything different with frequencies. And that's because it's simply just being hit with too much noise, right? Too much input, basically. The more that you get, the more it kind of overpowers some of that sweeping effect you can kind of get, to the point where it just holds an attack exactly as it's hearing it, because it's receiving so much sound through there that it's just triggered entirely too much, right? And you could tune this a little bit more with some of the sensitivity, but at any rate, especially with the fact that this is a distorted signal as well, it's not going to trigger that and much differently than what you're hearing right now. Okay. And if you would want that to kind of sweep, you would probably need to use an expression pedal and attach it to a couple of these different areas so you could sweep it manually instead of expecting the envelope filter to be able to do that on its own. All right. Again, enough talking. I'm going to enable it on input 1, same as I did before, and I think you're going to hear a little bit of a difference. So let's do it one more time, just really quick. I'm going to play that same riff one more time with just the envelope filter enabled, and then I'm going to enable side chaining off of my input 1, and you'll hear the difference between how they behave. Okay. And now let's enable side chaining on input 1. Hear that? Hear how it's continually kind of like triggering and sweeping as I'm having more or less DI coming in as I'm playing the riff? Very cool. It's a really neat way to be able to trigger device blocks to behave differently. And I think this is going to really give you a lot of creativity, especially if they start getting into enabling side chaining for more devices, because I could certainly see this being really dope with some modulation and doing some of that, where you could really get some interesting results. But I'm happy with it. I'm happy with the fact that we have the ability to do this. I'm definitely happy with the fact that we can do this not only with the plug-in devices, but also with existing devices, right, in signal chain and whatnot for presets. So this is really cool. I think this is going to get unique, and I can tell you, when you start looking at the source that you can use to trigger these side chains, I mean, look at this. There's so many different devices and combinations that you could use to trigger these things. So imagine, if you will, and I'll just plant the seed here, imagine if we can get Rabia Massad's plugin capability on the Quad Cortex, especially with the synth that it has built in. I can definitely imagine some of those gates on the synth triggering side chains of, say, I don't know, like double delays or things of the sort that would really just make some heady, cool sounding different soundscapes. I'm really excited for that. But in the meantime, I'm very happy to be able to just start playing with this and getting familiar with it. So yeah, that's side chaining with an envelope filter. As always, there you have it, a quick and dirty introduction to side chaining on the Quad Cortex for CorOS 3.0.0. So as I mentioned earlier, I think this is a really good feature. I think it's definitely something that's going to be really cool in the future when you get even more devices capable of being able to leverage side chaining. For now, I think we're a little limited on the capabilities, but I still think there's a lot of potential getting creative and really using them. But I would love to see some more devices be there, especially devices from future plugins, as I kind of was hinting to, synth-based plugins and just some of the others that I think would really benefit from just amazing abilities to have triggers happen from many different sources. I think that it's going to definitely be a very cool thing. But I really hope you found this informative. I know side chaining can be a little complicated to understand and kind of wrap your head around. If you got questions, comments, anything else, please leave them in the comment section below. I'll do my best to be able to answer anything for you that I can to the best of my abilities. So until next time, thank you so much for coming. I'll see you in the next one.